The duel in Palpatine's office is one of the most debated moments in Star Wars history. For decades, fans have argued over a single question. Did Mace Windu truly defeat the Dark Lord of the Sith? Or was Palpatine playing a game far more sinister than anyone realized? The scene appears straightforward. Mace Windu, master of the Jedi Order and wielder of the rare purple lightsaber, faces off against Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, who reveals himself as Darth Sidious, the Phantom Menace who orchestrated the Clone Wars. The duel is brutal and swift. Within moments, 3 Jedi Masters lie dead. Only Windu remains, his blade at the Sith Lord's throat, victory seemingly within his grasp. But then Anakin Skywalker arrives, and everything changes. What follows is a scene of lightning, screams, and betrayal. Palpatine unleashes torrents of Force lightning. Windu deflects the attack back into the Sith Lord's face, disfiguring him. Palpatine begs for mercy, appearing weak and defenseless. Anakin, torn between loyalty and desperation, makes the fatal choice to strike down Windu, allowing Palpatine to destroy the Jedi Master with a final blast of lightning that sends him plummeting from the tower window. The Sith Lord survives, the Jedi Master dies, and the galaxy falls into darkness. But was it real? Was Mace Windu moments away from ending the Sith once and for all? Or was Palpatine manipulating every second of that confrontation, orchestrating his own seeming defeat to turn Anakin Skywalker to the dark side? This is not a simple question. The answer cuts to the heart of what it means to understand the Force, the nature of power, and the terrifying genius of Darth Sidious. To find the truth, we must examine every detail of that duel, explore the philosophies of both combatants, analyze the perspectives of George Lucas himself, and dive deep into the Legends lore that expands on this pivotal moment. Because if Mace Windu truly defeated Palpatine, it means the Sith Lord was vulnerable, that the Jedi had a chance to stop the Empire before it began. But if Palpatine was faking, if every moment was calculated to manipulate Anakin Skywalker into becoming Darth Vader, then the duel was never about victory or defeat. It was about corruption. It was about turning the Chosen One into the weapon that would destroy the Jedi Order forever. So let us begin. Let us dissect the duel that changed the galaxy. Let us examine the evidence, the arguments, the hidden truths, and let us answer the question that has haunted Star Wars fans for nearly 2 decades. Did Mace Windu actually defeat Palpatine? Act 1. The Warrior and the Deceiver. Chapter 1. Mace Windu, the warrior who walked the edge. To understand whether Mace Windu could defeat Palpatine, we must first understand who Mace Windu was. Not the legend, not the myth, the man. Mace Windu was not like other Jedi. While the Order preached detachment and serenity, Windu walked a far more dangerous path. He was a warrior who understood that the Jedi's greatest strength could also be their greatest weakness. He recognized that absolute adherence to the light side, absolute rejection of passion and emotion, left the Jedi vulnerable to those who embraced the full spectrum of the Force. So Windu created something the Jedi Council feared and respected in equal measure: Vapad. Vapad was not just a lightsaber form, it was a philosophy, a state of mind. Form 7, the most aggressive and unpredictable of the 7 classical lightsaber forms, had traditionally been forbidden or discouraged because it required the practitioner to channel their inner darkness, to dance on the edge of the dark side without falling in. The previous Form 7 variant, Juyo, had been banned after too many practitioners fell to the dark side. But Windu believed he could master what others could not. He developed Vapad as a superconducting loop, a technique that allowed him to channel his opponent's dark side energy back at them, using their own power as a weapon while remaining grounded in the light. It was a technique that only 2 Jedi ever mastered: Mace Windu and his apprentice, Depa Billaba. and even Bilaba eventually succumbed to the darkness Vapad exposed her to. But Windu did not fall. He walked the edge every day of his life and never lost his balance. This made him uniquely dangerous. When facing a dark side opponent, Windu's power grew exponentially. The stronger his enemy, the stronger he became. Against a Sith Lord of Palpatine's magnitude, Windu would become a whirlwind of lethal energy, a mirror reflecting the dark side back upon itself. Beyond Vapad, Windu possessed a rare force ability that only a handful of beings in galactic history ever manifested: Shatterpoint. This ability allowed him to perceive the fault lines in the Force itself, the critical junctures where a single action could shatter an entire structure, whether that structure was physical, social, or metaphysical. Windu could see the weak point in a fortress wall, the fragile thread holding together a criminal organization, or the moment of vulnerability in an enemy's defense. In combat, Shatterpoint made Windu nearly unbeatable. He could perceive the exact instant to strike, the precise angle to attack, the perfect moment to exploit an opening that others couldn't even see. It was precognition, analysis, and tactical genius, all rolled into one Force-enhanced ability. Windu was also a master tactician and general. During the Clone Wars, he led countless campaigns, commanding clone troopers and Jedi Knights alike. He was not just a duelist, he was a battlefield commander who understood strategy, terrain, and the psychology of warfare. His mind was as sharp as his blade, and yet, despite all this power, Windu was not arrogant. He was cautious. He understood the limits of Jedi philosophy. He knew the Order had grown complacent, that the Jedi had become so entrenched in politics and bureaucracy that they had lost sight of their true purpose. When the Clone Wars began, Windu was one of the few who recognized that the Jedi were being manipulated, that the war itself was a trap. But recognizing a trap and escaping it are two different things. By the time Windu confronted Palpatine, the trap had already closed around the Jedi Order. The question was whether Windu could break through. So we have a warrior who channels darkness without falling, a seer who perceives the fault lines of reality, a general who commands armies, and a philosopher who understands the fragility of the Jedi Order. This was the man who entered Palpatine's office with 3 other Jedi Masters to arrest the Supreme Chancellor for treason. But who was the being he faced? Chapter 2. Darth Sidious, the Dark Lord who conquered the galaxy Sheev Palpatine. Darth Sidious, the Dark Lord of the Sith who destroyed the Jedi Order, corrupted the Chosen One, and ruled the galaxy for over 2 decades. To call him powerful is an understatement so profound it borders on meaningless. Palpatine was not simply a Sith Lord. He was the culmination of a 1,000-year plan, the final inheritor of the rule of 2, the being who achieved what every Sith before him had failed to accomplish: total galactic domination. Let us be clear about what this means. For 1,000 years, the Sith operated in secret, passing their knowledge from master to apprentice, each generation growing stronger, more cunning, more patient. The rule of 2, established by Darth Bane after the ancient Sith Empire destroyed itself through infighting, dictated that there would only ever be 2 Sith at a time, a master to embody power and an apprentice to crave it. When the apprentice surpassed the master, they would kill them and take an apprentice of their own. This brutal system ensured that the Sith grew stronger with every generation, while the Jedi, complacent in their thousands, stagnated. By the time Palpatine became Darth Sidious, he was the inheritor of a millennium of concentrated Sith knowledge and power. But Palpatine was more than just the beneficiary of inheritance. He was a genius, a manipulator so skilled that he orchestrated the Clone Wars, a galactic conflict involving trillions of beings, while serving as the leader of both sides. He played the role of the benevolent Chancellor Palpatine, leading the Republic while secretly commanding the Separatists as Darth Sidious. He convinced the galaxy to grant him emergency powers, turning a democracy into a dictatorship through legal means, with the applause of senators and the support of the people. He manipulated the Jedi Council into spreading themselves thin across the galaxy, leading clone armies in a war that slowly eroded their principles and exhausted their strength. He orchestrated the creation of the clone army itself, embedding Order 66 into their programming years before executing it. He identified Anakin Skywalker as the key to his ultimate victory and spent over a decade grooming him, befriending him, isolating him from the Jedi and planting seeds of doubt that would eventually blossom into betrayal. Every major event of the prequel trilogy was Palpatine's design. The Trade Federation's blockade of Naboo, the assassination attempts on Senator Amidala, the creation of the Grand Army of the Republic, the execution of Count Dooku, the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. Every word, every action, every seemingly coincidental event was part of a web so intricate that even the wisest Jedi never saw the full picture until it was far too late. And then there was his raw power in the Force. Palpatine was a master of every dark side discipline. He could unleash Force lightning so powerful it could kill instantly or torture indefinitely. He could cloud the perceptions of the entire Jedi Council, hiding his true nature despite being in their presence regularly for over a decade. He could drain the life force from others to sustain himself. He possessed knowledge of Sith alchemy, forbidden rituals, and ancient dark side techniques that had been lost for millennia. In lightsaber combat, Palpatine had mastered all 7 forms, though he personally favored Form 7, Huyo, the same aggressive style that Mace Windu had refined into Vapad. But where Windu walked the edge between light and dark, Palpatine had fully embraced the dark side, using his rage, hatred, and ambition to fuel his attacks. Legends sources describe Palpatine as moving with such speed during combat that he appeared as a blur, his attacks so fast and ferocious that even Jedi Masters struggled to track his movements. His strikes were not just physical. They were infused with dark side energy that could shatter defenses and break the will of his opponents. But perhaps his greatest weapon was his mind. Palpatine was a master of psychological warfare. He understood fear, doubt, pride, and attachment better than any therapist or philosopher. He knew how to identify a person's weakness and exploit it mercilessly. With Anakin, he exploited the young Jedi's fear of loss, his attachment to Padme, his resentment toward the Council, and his desperate need for validation. With the galaxy, he exploited fear of chaos, desire for security, and prejudice against the Jedi as an elite order that had grown out of touch with common people. When Mace Windu entered Palpatine's office, he was not just facing a Sith Lord. He was facing a being who had already won. The game was over. The trap had been sprung. The Jedi were about to be destroyed galaxy-wide in a matter of hours. The only question was whether one Jedi Master in one final confrontation could undo everything Palpatine had built. Chapter 3: The Arrest, Jedi Justice versus Sith Deception. The moment Mace Windu learned Palpatine's true identity, he knew there was no time for deliberation. Anakin Skywalker had just revealed that Chancellor Palpatine was the Sith Lord the Jedi had been searching for throughout the entire Clone Wars. For Windu, this was the shatterpoint he had been unconsciously seeking, the moment where the entire war, the entire conspiracy, could either be shattered or become unbreakable. Windu made his decision immediately. He would arrest Palpatine, not through legal channels. There was no time, and Palpatine controlled those channels anyway. Not by informing the full council. Many Jedi were scattered across the galaxy, and communication could be intercepted. The arrest had to be swift, decisive, and overwhelming. Windu assembled a team of 4 Jedi Masters, including himself. He chose Kit Fisto, a Nautolan Jedi Master renowned for his lightsaber skills and his expertise in Form I, Shi Cho, as well as his mastery of underwater combat. He chose Saesee Tiin, an Iktachi Jedi Master and one of the Order's greatest starfighter pilots, known for his incredible reflexes and combat prowess. And he chose Ajan Kolar, a Zabrak Jedi Master trained in aggressive lightsaber combat. 4 Jedi Masters, not knights, not Padawans, masters, experienced warriors, each one a legend in their own right. This was not a diplomatic mission. This was a strike team designed to arrest, or if necessary, eliminate the most dangerous individual in the galaxy. They entered Palpatine's office in the evening. The Chancellor was standing near the window, his back to them, gazing out at the Coruscant skyline. He appeared calm, almost as if he had been expecting them. Windu stepped forward, his hand resting on his lightsaber hilt. "In the name of the Galactic Senate of the Republic, you are under arrest, Chancellor." Palpatine turned slowly, his face a mask of pleasant confusion. "Are you threatening me, Master Jedi?" Windu's voice was steady. "The Senate will decide your fate." And then Palpatine smiled. Not the warm, grandfatherly smile of the Chancellor, a predator's smile, cold, amused, triumphant. "I am the Senate." What happened next occurred in less than 3 seconds, though those 3 seconds would be debated and analyzed for decades. Palpatine ignited a crimson lightsaber that seemed to appear in his hand from nowhere, a weapon hidden in his sleeve, ready for this exact moment. He moved. The word "moved" doesn't do justice to what witnesses described. Palpatine launched himself across the room in a spinning leap, his lightsaber a blur of red light. He struck Ajan Kolar first, killing him instantly with a single thrust through the chest. Before Kolar's body even began to fall, Palpatine had already spun and decapitated Saesee Tiin. Kit Fisto managed to ignite his lightsaber and block 2 strikes before Palpatine's blade pierced his torso. 3 Jedi Masters, dead in under 3 seconds. Only Mace Windu remained, his purple blade ignited, his stance shifting into Vapad's opening form. The superconducting loop activated. The dark side, energy radiating from Palpatine, his rage, his hatred, his savage joy in killing Jedi, all of it flowed into Windu and back out through his blade. The real duel began. Act 2, the duel, blade against blade, philosophy against philosophy. Chapter 4, the Dance of Death. The duel between Mace Windu and Darth Sidious was unlike any lightsaber battle in the prequel trilogy. It was not the acrobatic spectacle of Yoda versus Dooku, nor the tragic poetry of Obi-Wan versus Anakin. It was raw, brutal, and relentless, a clash between 2 masters of Form 7th, each wielding the most aggressive lightsaber style in existence, each fueled by the Force in ways fundamentally opposed, yet terrifyingly similar. Palpatine attacked with Juyo, the ancient Sith variant of Form 7. His strikes came in unpredictable patterns, slashing from impossible angles, incorporating spins, flourishes, and acrobatic leaps that defied conventional combat logic. But every movement had purpose, every flourish concealed a killing strike. Juyo was designed to overwhelm opponents through sheer aggression and unpredictability, to break their defense by attacking from angles they couldn't anticipate, to exploit the hesitation that comes from facing an opponent who seems to defy physics. Palpatine's speed was supernatural. His body, though aged, moved with the enhanced agility of a being fully immersed in the dark side. The Force flowed through his limbs, accelerating his movements to the point where he appeared as a blur to normal observers. His lightsaber traced patterns of red light that seemed to be everywhere at once, but Windu did not fall. Vapad was the perfect counter to Juyo. Where Juyo fed on the practitioner's own darkness, Vapad fed on the opponent's darkness. Every ounce of rage Palpatine poured into his attacks, every surge of dark side energy he channeled to increase his speed and power, Windu absorbed and reflected. The superconducting loop meant that fighting Windu was, in a very real sense, like fighting a mirror of one's own dark side. And Palpatine was very, very dark. Windu's fighting style was different from Palpatine's. Where the Sith Lord relied on acrobatics and flourishes, Windu's movements were economical and precise. He did not waste energy on unnecessary spins or leaps. Every strike was calculated to defend and counterattack simultaneously. Every parry flowed seamlessly into a riposte. His blade moved in tight, controlled arcs that maximized defensive coverage while creating openings for lethal counters. But the true difference was philosophical. Palpatine fought with hatred. Windu fought with purpose. Palpatine sought to dominate and destroy. Windu sought to end a threat to the Republic and the Jedi Order. This distinction might seem minor, but in a duel between Force users of this magnitude, intention mattered as much as technique. The battle moved from the office into the antechamber, then back into the office. Furniture exploded as lightsaber strikes missed their targets. Walls were scorched. The air itself seemed to vibrate with the force energy emanating from both combatants. Palpatine's attacks became more ferocious, more desperate. He was beginning to realize something that filled him with an emotion he rarely experienced: concern. He was not winning. Mace Windu, master of the Jedi Council, wielder of Vapad, perceiver of shatterpoints, was matching him strike for strike. More than that, Windu was beginning to dominate the duel. Chapter 5. The Shatterpoint. Windu's unique force ability, Shatterpoint, allowed him to perceive the critical moment in any conflict, the instant where everything could change. As the duel raged, Windu's enhanced perception saw deeper than Palpatine's physical movements. He saw the patterns in the Sith Lord's attacks. He saw the rhythm of Palpatine's breathing. He saw the microscopic tells that preceded each strike, and then he saw it, the Shatterpoint. There was a moment, a fraction of a second, where Palpatine's defense would be vulnerable. It was approaching. Windu could feel it in the Force like a distant sound growing louder. He adjusted his stance, shifted his weight, prepared his counterstrike. He would have one opportunity. If he missed, Palpatine would adapt, and the moment would never come again. The Sith Lord lunged forward with a diagonal slash, aimed at Windu's neck. It was a feint. Palpatine intended to spin at the last second and strike from the opposite angle. But Windu saw through the deception. Instead of blocking the initial strike, he sidestepped and brought his purple blade down in a precise arc aimed at Palpatine's wrist. The Shatterpoint had arrived. Palpatine tried to adjust mid-spin, but he was a fraction of a second too slow. Windu's blade connected with Palpatine's lightsaber hilt, shearing through the weapon's emitter and destroying it. The crimson blade vanished. The Sith Lord was disarmed. For one frozen moment, Palpatine stood there, weaponless, facing Mace Windu's glowing purple blade. His expression shifted from shock to what appeared to be fear. He staggered backward toward the window. Windu advanced, his lightsaber steady, pointed at Palpatine's chest. "You are under arrest, my lord." Palpatine's face twisted. "Are you going to kill me? I am an unarmed prisoner. Killing me would not be the Jedi way." Windu's voice was hard. "You are a Sith Lord. You are too dangerous to be left alive." And that was when Anakin Skywalker burst through the door. Chapter 6. The Performance. Everything changed the moment Anakin entered the room. The dynamic shifted. The duel was no longer just about two Force users fighting to the death. It became a performance, a manipulation, a final play in Palpatine's grand design. Palpatine's demeanor transformed instantly. The confident Sith Lord, the being who moments ago had killed 3 Jedi Masters in seconds, suddenly appeared weak and terrified. He cowered near the window, raising his hands as if to shield himself from Windu's lightsaber. "Please don't kill me," Palpatine pleaded, his voice cracking with what sounded like genuine fear. "I'm too weak. I surrender." Windu didn't lower his blade. "You are under arrest." But Palpatine wasn't speaking to Windu anymore. He was speaking to Anakin. "Anakin, help me. Don't let him kill me. I can't hold on any longer." And then Palpatine raised his hands and unleashed Force lightning. The bolts of electric blue energy arced from his fingertips toward Windu. But the Jedi Master was ready. He angled his lightsaber blade to intercept the lightning, and the energy reflected back toward Palpatine, striking the Sith Lord in the face. Palpatine screamed. His face began to twist and melt, the dark side corruption that he had hidden for decades now manifesting physically as the reflected lightning scorched his features. But he didn't stop. Even as his own attack disfigured him, even as his screams echoed through the office, Palpatine continued channeling lightning. It defied logic. If he was truly overpowered, if he was truly being defeated, why didn't he stop? Windu shouted over the crackling energy, "He's too dangerous to be left alive." Anakin, watching from the doorway, saw an unarmed old man being attacked by a Jedi with a deadly weapon. He saw Palpatine's face being destroyed by reflected lightning. He heard the Sith Lord's pleas for mercy. But what Anakin didn't see, what he couldn't see, because he lacked Windu's experience and insight, was the calculation behind Palpatine's actions. He didn't see the subtle shifts in Palpatine's body language that indicated the Sith Lord could stop at any moment. He didn't perceive the manipulation, the psychological warfare, the performance designed specifically to make Anakin doubt the Jedi and sympathize with Palpatine. Windu prepared to deliver the killing blow. He raised his lightsaber. From his perspective, this was necessary. Palpatine was too powerful, too dangerous, too capable of escaping any prison or trial. The only way to end the Sith threat was to end Palpatine. But Anakin saw something different. He saw the Jedi abandoning their principles, saw Windu about to execute an unarmed prisoner. And in that moment of doubt, in that instant of moral confusion, Palpatine's manipulation bore fruit. "I need him," Anakin shouted. "He can save Padme." Windu's blade began its downward arc. Anakin ignited his lightsaber and slashed, severing Windu's weapon hand. The purple blade fell away. Windu staggered, defenseless, and Palpatine, who seconds ago had appeared weak and defeated, suddenly straightened. The fear vanished from his expression, replaced by savage triumph. His lightning, no longer reflected by Windu's blade, struck the Jedi Master full force, lifting him off his feet and hurling him through the window. Mace Windu, Master of the Jedi Council, fell into the Coruscant night, his body disappearing into the endless cityscape below. The Sith Lord had won. Act 3. The evidence. Was it real or theater? Chapter 7. The argument for Windu's victory. So we arrive at the central question. Was Mace Windu's victory over Palpatine real, or was it an elaborate deception? Let us first examine the evidence that supports Windu's genuine defeat of the Sith Lord. First, the disarming. Windu destroyed Palpatine's lightsaber. This was not a lucky strike or a momentary advantage. It was the culmination of a sustained duel in which Windu progressively dominated his opponent. Palpatine, despite his incredible speed and power, could not overcome Windu's Vapad technique. The superconducting loop turned Palpatine's own dark side energy against him, and the more ferociously the Sith Lord attacked, the stronger Windu became. In Star Wars, Revenge of the Sith novelization, Matthew Stover provides additional context to this moment. He describes Windu's perception during the duel, noting that Windu could feel victory approaching, could sense the Shatterpoint crystallizing. This was not wishful thinking. It was Windu's proven force ability manifesting. When a master of Shatterpoint perceives a fault line and exploits it, the result is shattering. Palpatine's lightsaber shattered, his defense shattered. Second, George Lucas's own statements. In multiple interviews and director commentaries, Lucas has confirmed that Mace Windu did, in fact, defeat Palpatine in combat. According to Lucas, Windu was uniquely suited to fight Palpatine because of Vaapada's ability to channel dark side energy. The more powerful Palpatine was, the more dangerous Windu became in response. Lucas stated that by the time Anakin entered the room, Palpatine had genuinely been overpowered and was about to be killed. This is perhaps the strongest evidence for Windu's victory. The creator of Star Wars himself has stated that the defeat was real, not feigned. Third, the context of Palpatine's injuries. When the lightning was reflected back at Palpatine, his face was permanently disfigured. This was not a temporary effect or a disguise. Palpatine remained scarred for the rest of his life. If the entire confrontation was a performance, why would Palpatine allow himself to be genuinely harmed? He could have faked weakness without actually damaging himself. The answer from Windu's victory camp is that Palpatine didn't intend to be harmed. It was an unintended consequence of Windu's superior combat ability. The lightning reflection was real, and it genuinely injured the Sith Lord. Palpatine simply adapted to the situation and used his disfigurement as a political tool, later claiming to the Senate that the Jedi had scarred him during their assassination attempt. Fourth, the deaths of the other Jedi Masters. Palpatine killed Kit Fisto, Agen Kolar, and Saesee almost instantly, demonstrating his lethal efficiency when facing opponents he outmatched. But he could not quickly dispatch Windu. Instead, the duel was prolonged, moving through multiple rooms, with Palpatine unable to land a killing blow despite his speed and aggression. The most logical explanation is that Windu was simply too skilled, too powerful, and too perfectly suited as a counter to Palpatine's style. Fifth, Windu's character. Mace Windu was not naive or easily deceived. He was cautious, analytical, and possessed a force ability that allowed him to perceive deception and hidden weakness. If Palpatine had been faking his defeat, Windu would likely have sensed it. The fact that Windu prepared to deliver the killing blow suggests he genuinely believed he had won, and Windu was not a Jedi who deluded himself. These arguments collectively paint a picture of a genuine victory. Mace Windu, through a combination of superior technique, unique force abilities, and sheer determination, overcame the most powerful Sith Lord in 1,000 years. Palpatine was moments away from death when Anakin's intervention saved him. But there is another interpretation, one that is darker, more complex, and perhaps more consistent with Palpatine's established character as the galaxy's greatest manipulator. Chapter 8. The Argument for Palpatine's Deception. Now let us examine the evidence that Palpatine was never truly defeated, that the entire confrontation was orchestrated to turn Anakin Skywalker to the dark side. First, timing. Palpatine's apparent defeat occurred at the exact moment Anakin arrived, not before, not after, precisely when Anakin could witness it. If Palpatine had truly been overpowered earlier in the duel, before Anakin's arrival, the fight would have ended then. But it didn't. The critical moment, the disarming, the cowering, the lightning, all occurred when Anakin was present to see it. This is highly suspicious. Palpatine had spent over a decade manipulating Anakin, planting seeds of doubt about the Jedi, positioning himself as the only person who could save Padme. The confrontation in the office was the culmination of that manipulation. For maximum effect, Anakin needed to witness a scenario where the Jedi appeared to abandon their principles, where Windu seemed ready to execute an unarmed prisoner. The timing suggests Palpatine deliberately prolonged the duel until Anakin arrived, then staged his defeat. Second, Palpatine's Force abilities. We know Palpatine could mask his presence from the entire Jedi Council for years. We know he could manipulate perceptions, cloud judgment, and create illusions. Is it so difficult to believe he could fake weakness during a duel? Especially when the target of the deception wasn't Windu, it was Anakin. Palpatine didn't need to convince Windu he was defeated. He only needed to appear defeated long enough for Anakin to intervene. And he succeeded. Third, the lightning. This is perhaps the most telling detail. Palpatine continued using Force lightning even as it was being reflected back into his face, scarring him permanently. Why would he do this if he was truly overpowered? The standard explanation from the Windu 1 camp is that Palpatine couldn't stop, that Windu's lightsaber reflection trapped him in a feedback loop. But this doesn't align with what we know about Force lightning. It's not a sustained beam that continues automatically. It requires active concentration and will. The user can stop at any time. Palpatine has demonstrated precise control over his lightning in other contexts, using it to torture or kill as needed. Yet in this moment, he apparently lost control. The alternative explanation is that Palpatine deliberately continued the lightning, knowing it would be reflected, knowing it would scar him, because the visual impact was necessary to complete the manipulation. Anakin needed to see an innocent man being disfigured by a Jedi. The scars became both a psychological weapon against Anakin and a political tool to turn the Senate against the Jedi. Fourth, Palpatine's immediate recovery. The instant Anakin severed Windu's hand, Palpatine's demeanor changed completely. He went from cowering and weak to unleashing a devastating blast of lightning that killed a Jedi Master instantly. There was no transition, no period of recovery, just an immediate return to full power. This suggests he had never lost that power in the first place. If Windu had genuinely exhausted and defeated Palpatine, we would expect some indication of fatigue or weakness even after Anakin's intervention. Instead, Palpatine demonstrated full strength immediately, then proceeded to fight Yoda shortly afterward without any apparent diminishment in ability. Fifth, the rule of two and Sith philosophy. Palpatine had been preparing Anakin to become his apprentice for years. He knew Anakin was the key to destroying the Jedi. But Anakin's moral compass, though compromised, was still functional. He wouldn't turn to the dark side simply because Palpatine asked nicely. He needed a breaking point, a moment where his faith in the Jedi shattered irreparably. What better way to accomplish this than to force Anakin to choose between the Jedi Order and saving Palpatine, and then have Anakin's choice result in a Jedi Master's death? The guilt, the moral compromise, the betrayal of everything Anakin believed in would shatter his identity and make him vulnerable to complete corruption. Palpatine needed Anakin to commit an irreversible act, staging his own defeat, forcing Anakin to intervene, and then finishing. Windu created exactly that scenario. Sixth, the prophecy. Palpatine was obsessed with Anakin as the chosen one. He believed Anakin was destined to bring balance to the Force, though Palpatine interpreted balance as the destruction of the Jedi and the rise of the Sith. Every action Palpatine took during the Clone Wars was designed to isolate and corrupt Anakin. Would such a being so obsessed with controlling Anakin's destiny leave his final confrontation with the Jedi to chance? Would he genuinely risk death at Windu's hands, trusting that Anakin would arrive in time and make the right choice? Or would he orchestrate every detail, ensuring that when the critical moment came, Anakin would have no choice but to act? That the scenario would be so carefully constructed that betrayal would seem like the only option? These arguments suggest a very different picture. Palpatine was never in danger. He controlled every aspect of the confrontation, from the moment Windu entered his office to the moment Windu fell from the window. The duel itself was real. Palpatine did fight genuinely, did exert effort, but he was always in control of the outcome. He allowed Windu to disarm him, allowed the lightning to scar him, allowed himself to appear defeated, all to manipulate Anakin into committing the ultimate betrayal. Chapter 9. George Lucas and the Problem of Authorial Intent. So which interpretation is correct? We have evidence supporting both sides. And interestingly, both sides claim George Lucas as their authority. Lucas has stated in interviews that Mace Windu genuinely defeated Palpatine. This seems definitive. The creator has spoken. Case closed. But Star Wars is more than just Lucas's statements. It's the films themselves, the visual storytelling, the subtext. And when we watch the scene, when we analyze the timing, the character motivations, and the narrative structure, the Palpatine was faking interpretation becomes compelling. Moreover, Lucas has also discussed Palpatine's character as the ultimate deceiver, a master manipulator who orchestrated the entire Clone Wars while playing both sides. Would such a character, at the moment of his ultimate triumph, suddenly become helpless? Or would he stage one final performance to corrupt the chosen one? The tension between authorial intent and textual analysis is a common phenomenon in literary criticism. Sometimes what a creator says about their work differs from what the work itself communicates. Lucas may have intended Windu's victory to be genuine, but the execution of the scene, the timing, the behavior, the immediate recovery suggests layers of deception that make the straightforward interpretation problematic. There's also the issue of multiple drafts and versions. Star Wars has expanded through novels, comics, and animated series, many of which were produced while Lucas was still involved. Different writers interpreted the duel differently, and Lucas approved various conflicting accounts. In some Legends sources, Palpatine's deception is strongly implied. In others, Windu's victory is emphasized. Perhaps the truth is that both interpretations are valid. Perhaps the scene was deliberately constructed to be ambiguous, to generate exactly the debate we're having now. After all, the central theme of the prequel trilogy is deception and the difficulty of perceiving truth. The Jedi couldn't see that Palpatine was a Sith Lord despite being in his presence regularly. They couldn't perceive the trap closing around them. Even at the end, Windu believed he had won. But did he? The ambiguity mirrors the Jedi's blindness throughout the trilogy. They were so confident in their understanding of the Force, so certain of their superiority, that they couldn't imagine being fundamentally deceived. If Windu genuinely believed he defeated Palpatine, but Palpatine was actually in control the entire time, it becomes the ultimate expression of the Jedi's tragic flaw, arrogance masked as wisdom. Act 4. The Psychology, Understanding the Characters. Chapter 10. The Mind of Mace Windu. To truly answer whether Windu defeated Palpatine, we must understand what each character believed in that moment and why. Mace Windu entered Palpatine's office believing he was arresting a Sith Lord who had manipulated the entire galaxy. He knew the risks. He knew Palpatine would resist. He was prepared for a fight to the death if necessary. When the duel began and 3 Jedi Masters died in seconds, Windu's worst fears were confirmed. Palpatine was extraordinarily dangerous, far more powerful than the Council had estimated. But Windu didn't panic. He activated Vapad and channeled Palpatine's dark side energy back at him. He perceived the shatterpoints in Palpatine's defense and exploited them methodically. When he disarmed Palpatine, Windu felt vindication. His technique had worked. His preparation had been sufficient. He had faced the Dark Lord of the Sith and won. But then came the moral dilemma. Palpatine, now weaponless, appeared to surrender. Jedi doctrine was clear. You don't execute prisoners. You arrest them and let the justice system handle their fate. But Windu also knew that Palpatine controlled the justice system. There would be no fair trial, no real accountability. Palpatine had too much power, too many resources, too many contingency plans. The only way to truly end the Sith threat was to end Palpatine. This is a crucial moment for understanding Windu's character. He was willing to cross a line that most Jedi wouldn't. He was willing to execute an unarmed prisoner because he understood the pragmatic reality. Sometimes principles must be compromised to achieve the greater good. This pragmatism was part of what made Windu such an effective warrior and such a controversial figure within the Jedi Order. When Anakin entered, Windu's focus remained on Palpatine. He saw the Sith Lord as the immediate threat. He didn't fully register Anakin's moral crisis or the psychological manipulation occurring. From Windu's perspective, the correct action was obvious. Kill Palpatine now, deal with political fallout later, but he underestimated two things: Palpatine's ability to manipulate Anakin even in apparent defeat, and Anakin's desperation to save Padme. These blind spots cost Windu his life. Chapter 11. The Mind of Anakin Skywalker. Anakin Skywalker arrived at Palpatine's office in a state of severe psychological distress. He had just learned that the man he considered a mentor, perhaps even a father figure, was a Sith Lord, the enemy he had been fighting against for years. This revelation should have been simple. Arrest Palpatine, inform the Council, let justice proceed. But nothing in Anakin's life was ever simple. He was haunted by visions of Padme dying in childbirth. These weren't vague nightmares. They felt like prophecies, like inevitable futures rushing toward him. He had experienced prophetic visions before, most notably of his mother's suffering, and he had failed to save her. The trauma of that failure drove his desperation to save Padme. Palpatine had told him about Darth Plagueis, a Sith Lord who could manipulate midi-chlorians to prevent death. Palpatine implied he knew this power, that he could teach Anakin how to save Padme. From Anakin's perspective, Palpatine represented the only hope of saving the woman he loved. So when Anakin entered the office and saw Windu about to kill Palpatine, he didn't see justice being served. He saw his last hope dying. He saw a Jedi abandoning their principles to commit murder. He saw an unarmed old man begging for mercy while a warrior prepared to execute him. This was precisely the scenario Palpatine had been engineering for over a decade. Every conversation, every seed of doubt planted about the Council, every moment of connection between Palpatine and Anakin had been preparing for this instant. Anakin's perception was so warped by fear, desperation, and manipulation that he couldn't see the truth. Palpatine was not a helpless victim. He was the architect of the entire scenario. When Anakin struck down Windu, he crossed a threshold from which there was no return. He had betrayed the Jedi Order, killed a Jedi Master, and committed himself to the dark side. The psychological weight of that action shattered his identity. He was no longer Anakin Skywalker, Jedi Knight. He was something else, something broken, something that Palpatine could reshape into Darth Vader. Chapter 12. The Mind of Darth Sidious. And finally, we come to Palpatine himself. What was he thinking during the duel? What was his objective? If we accept the straightforward interpretation that he genuinely fought to win and was overpowered, then Palpatine was simply defending himself, using all his skills to survive, and got lucky when Anakin arrived in time to save him. But this interpretation doesn't align with Palpatine's established character. He didn't survive a millennium of Sith history, manipulate the entire galaxy, and orchestrate the Clone Wars by relying on luck. He was a planner, a schemer, a being who accounted for every variable. So let's consider the alternative. Palpatine knew Windu and the other masters were coming. He may have even orchestrated it. After all, he had just revealed his identity to Anakin and sent the young Jedi away, creating a scenario where Anakin would immediately inform the Council. Palpatine could have easily predicted that Windu would assemble a strike team and attempt an arrest. This would give Palpatine time to prepare. He could have killed Windu and the others instantly, the way he killed the first 3 masters. But that wouldn't serve his ultimate goal. His objective wasn't to survive the arrest. He was confident in his ability to do that. His objective was to turn Anakin, so he fought Windu genuinely, exerting effort, making it look like a real duel. He killed the other masters quickly to demonstrate his power, but he allowed Windu to be a credible threat. He let the duel go on long enough that when Anakin arrived, he would witness an intense confrontation. And then, at the critical moment, Palpatine staged his defeat. He allowed his lightsaber to be destroyed. He cowered near the window. He unleashed lightning, knowing Windu would reflect it, knowing it would scar him. The pain was real, but it was an acceptable price for the ultimate prize, Anakin's soul. Everything Palpatine did in those final moments was theater designed for an audience of one. He played the role of the weak victim, forcing Anakin to make an impossible choice. And when Anakin chose to save him, Palpatine immediately dropped the act and killed Windu, demonstrating that he had never been truly helpless. From this perspective, Palpatine's mind during the duel was focused not on Windu but on Anakin. Windu was just an obstacle, a prop in the final performance. The real battle was psychological, fought in Anakin's mind, and Palpatine won it completely. A-Seat 5, The Legends Lore, Deeper Truths. Chapter 13, The Novelization's Hidden Clues. The official novelization of Revenge of the Sith by Matthew Stover provides additional context that both supports and complicates our understanding of the duel. Stover is a skilled writer who collaborated with George Lucas and had access to details not fully captured in the film. In the novel, the duel is described from multiple perspectives, including Windu's internal thoughts. Stover writes that Windu could feel the dark side energy flowing from Palpatine and back through his Vapad technique. He describes Windu's growing confidence as he realizes his training and philosophy have prepared him perfectly for this confrontation. But the novel also includes subtle hints of Palpatine's manipulation. There are descriptions of Palpatine's expression shifting, of calculated moments where the Sith Lord appears to hesitate. Stover writes that Palpatine's face showed gratitude when Anakin intervened. Not relief, not fear turning to hope, but gratitude, as if Anakin had played his part exactly as scripted. The novelization describes Palpatine's transformation after Windu's death. And Palpatine was not an old man, nor was he decrepit or weak. He was Sidious, the Dark Lord of the Sith, and he was stronger than he had ever been. This phrasing suggests that the weakness had been an illusion that Palpatine had been performing. However, the novel also includes Lucas-approved passages that describe Windu genuinely dominating the duel, perceiving shatterpoints, and exploiting them. It's as if Stover, perhaps deliberately, constructed the scene to support both interpretations depending on how you read it. Chapter 14, Vapad and the Dark Side, the Jedi's Dangerous Weapon. To understand the duel fully, we must dive deeper into Vapad itself and why it made Windu uniquely dangerous to Palpatine, or appeared to. Vapad was developed by Windu as a refinement of Form 7, Juyo, but with a critical philosophical difference. Where Huyo required the practitioner to channel their own inner darkness, Vapad created a superconducting loop that channeled the opponent's darkness instead. In Legends lore, this is described using almost electrical terminology. Windu's connection to the Force became a conduit that absorbed dark side energy and reflected it back in the form of enhanced combat ability. The darker the opponent, the more powerful Windu became, when facing them. Against a relatively weak Darksider, Vapad provided a moderate advantage. Against Darth Sidious, the most powerful practitioner of the dark side in 1,000 years, Vapad should have made Windu nearly invincible. But here's the paradox. Vapad required Windu to dance on the edge of the dark side without falling in. Every time he used it, he risked corruption. The technique was so dangerous that only 2 Jedi ever mastered it, and one of them, Depa Billaba, eventually fell to the dark side during the Clone Wars. Windu survived the corruption because of his extraordinary willpower and his genuine commitment to Jedi principles. But there's an irony here. The very technique that should have made him invincible against Palpatine also required him to channel Palpatine's darkness through his own mind and body. He had to let Palpatine's malevolence flow through him to use it as fuel. Could Palpatine have exploited this? Could the Sith Lord have deliberately fed Windu dark side energy, allowing Vapad to work, letting Windu feel confident and in control, all while planting seeds of corruption that would bear fruit later, if there was a later? The answer is speculative, but it raises an interesting possibility. Maybe both interpretations are true simultaneously. Maybe Windu genuinely defeated Palpatine in the physical duel, while Palpatine won the larger psychological and strategic battle. Maybe Vapad worked exactly as designed, giving Windu the advantage, but Palpatine turned that advantage into the tool of Anakin's corruption. Chapter 15. The Aftermath. Who truly won? Regardless of whether Windu genuinely defeated Palpatine or fell victim to an elaborate deception, one fact is undeniable. Palpatine survived and Windu died. The immediate aftermath saw Palpatine execute Order 66, commanding clone troopers across the galaxy to turn on their Jedi generals and kill them. Thousands of Jedi were slaughtered within hours. The order that had protected the galaxy for millennia was nearly exterminated. Anakin Skywalker, now Darth Vader, led the 501st Legion to the Jedi Temple and murdered everyone inside, including younglings. The temple burned. The archives were destroyed or seized. The heart of the Jedi Order was annihilated. Palpatine declared himself emperor, claiming the Jedi had attempted a coup and that he had barely survived their assassination attempt. His scarred face became proof of Jedi treachery. The Senate, desperate for security after years of war, granted him absolute power. Democracy died. With thunderous applause, the galaxy fell into darkness. For over 20 years, Palpatine ruled through fear, built the Death Star, and hunted down the surviving Jedi. The Sith had achieved total victory, so even if Mace Windu won the duel, he lost the war. Even if he genuinely defeated Palpatine in combat, Palpatine's manipulation of Anakin ensured the Sith's ultimate triumph. This raises a philosophical question. What does victory mean? If you win every battle but lose the war, did you really win anything? If you defeat your enemy in combat but fall victim to their larger strategy, who is the true victor? Mace Windu may have been the superior duelist. He may have been moments away from killing Palpatine. But Palpatine was playing a different game entirely. One where the outcome of a single lightsaber duel was merely one variable among thousands. And in that larger game, Palpatine won decisively. Act 6. The conclusion, answering the impossible question. Chapter 16. Synthesis. Both truths coexist. After examining the evidence, analyzing the characters, exploring the lore, and considering multiple perspectives, we arrive at a conclusion that may seem unsatisfying but is perhaps the most honest answer possible. Mace Windu did defeat Palpatine, and Palpatine was in control the entire time. Both statements are true because they describe different levels of the confrontation. On the physical level, the level of pure lightsaber combat, Mace Windu won. His technique was superior in that specific matchup. Vapad countered Juyo perfectly. His Shatterpoint ability allowed him to perceive and exploit weaknesses in Palpatine's defense. The disarming was genuine. If the duel had continued as purely a martial contest, without outside interference, Windu would likely have killed Palpatine. George Lucas's statement that Windu defeated Palpatine is accurate when describing the combat itself. But on the strategic level, the level of psychological manipulation and long-term planning, Palpatine won. He may not have intended to lose his lightsaber specifically, but he was prepared for any outcome. His ultimate goal was not to win a duel. It was to corrupt Anakin Skywalker. Every action he took, including fighting Windu, serving the larger objective. When Palpatine appeared weak and defenseless, when he continued channeling lightning even as it scarred him, when he pleaded for mercy, he was performing for Anakin. The performance was so good that it fooled not just Anakin, but much of the audience watching the film. And when Anakin intervened, Palpatine immediately revealed his true power, demonstrating that the weakness had been an act. So the answer to, did Mace Windu defeat Palpatine, depends on what we mean by defeat. Did Windu win the lightsaber duel? Yes. Did Windu accomplish his objective of stopping Palpatine and saving the Republic? No. Did Palpatine stage his defeat to manipulate Anakin? Partially. He adapted to circumstances and turned them to his advantage. Did Palpatine face genuine danger? Possibly. If Anakin hadn't arrived, or had arrived and not intervened, Windu might have killed him. Did Palpatine plan for Anakin's intervention? Almost certainly the timing was too perfect, and Palpatine had spent over a decade engineering exactly this scenario. The truth is layered and complex, which is fitting for Star Wars, a saga that has always explored the ambiguity of truth, the difficulty of perceiving deception, and the tragic consequences of blind certainty. Chapter 17. The Greater Meaning, Arrogance and Blindness. The duel between Mace Windu and Palpatine is ultimately about the central theme of the prequel trilogy, the danger of arrogance disguised as wisdom. The Jedi Order believed they were the guardians of peace and justice. They believed their understanding of the Force was complete and correct. They believed they could sense the dark side and would never be deceived by a Sith Lord. All of these beliefs were wrong. Mace Windu represented the Jedi at their most capable, a warrior philosopher who acknowledged the Order's weaknesses and tried to prepare for threats others ignored. He developed Vapad specifically because he understood that pure light side philosophy left the Jedi vulnerable to dark side attacks. He was pragmatic enough to execute an unarmed prisoner when principles conflicted with survival. And yet, even Windu fell victim to the Sith's deception. Even he couldn't see the full scope of Palpatine's manipulation. Even he believed that winning the duel meant winning the war. Palpatine's greatest weapon was not Force lightning or lightsaber skill. It was his understanding of psychology, his ability to identify what people wanted and feared, and his willingness to provide exactly the right stimulus to make them act against their own interests. He understood that Anakin craved validation and feared loss. He understood that the Jedi Council valued principles over pragmatism. He understood that the Senate craved security over freedom, and he exploited every one of these weaknesses with surgical precision. The duel in Palpatine's office was the culmination of decades of manipulation. It was never just about two warriors fighting with lightsabers. It was about the moment where every thread Palpatine had woven came together, where the trap he had spent years constructing finally closed, where the psychological warfare he had waged against Anakin reached its breaking point. Mace Windu walked into that office believing he could arrest a Sith Lord and save the Republic. He was wrong. Not because he lacked skill or power, but because the battle had been lost long before it began. The real war was fought in shadows, in whispered conversations, in seeds of doubt planted years earlier. And in that war, Palpatine was always going to win. Chapter 18, The Final Answer. So did Mace Windu actually defeat Palpatine? Yes, in the specific context of lightsaber combat, applying the techniques he had spent decades perfecting, Mace Windu overcame Darth Sidious. He disarmed the Dark Lord of the Sith. He stood with his blade at Palpatine's throat, moments away from delivering a killing blow. This was a genuine achievement against an opponent of extraordinary power. But did it matter? No, because defeating Palpatine in a duel was never the real challenge. The real challenge was defeating Palpatine's plan, his manipulation, his stranglehold on the galaxy's political and psychological infrastructure. And that battle, Windu never even knew he was fighting. Palpatine won the war by losing the duel. He turned his apparent defeat into the catalyst for Anakin's fall. He transformed the moment of his greatest vulnerability into the moment of his ultimate triumph. Whether he planned every detail or simply adapted brilliantly to circumstances, the result was the same. The Sith survived, the Jedi fell, and the galaxy entered an age of darkness. Mace Windu was a great warrior, perhaps the greatest lightsaber duelist of his generation, but he was fighting the wrong battle. And in the end, that made all the difference. The question, did Mace Windu defeat Palpatine, is ultimately a question about what victory means. If victory is measured by skill in combat, then yes, Windu won. If victory is measured by achieving strategic objectives, then no, he lost completely. The tragic irony is that Windu's very success in the duel became the instrument of his failure. If he had been defeated quickly, if Palpatine had killed him in seconds like the other masters, Anakin might have arrived to see a Sith Lord triumphant and fully revealed. But because Windu was winning, because Palpatine appeared weak and defenseless, Anakin saw something different, a Jedi abandoning principles to commit murder. Palpatine understood that appearances matter more than reality, that perception shapes action more than truth, that a lie believed is more powerful than a truth ignored. He used these principles to manipulate an entire galaxy and to turn the most powerful Force user of the age into his servant. So the answer to our question is both yes and no. Windu defeated Palpatine and was defeated by him simultaneously. Both truths coexist, demonstrating the complexity and ambiguity at the heart of Star Wars. Decades after the duel in Palpatine's office, after the Empire fell and the Sith were finally destroyed, Luke Skywalker reflected on the failures of the old Jedi Order. He studied the histories, examined the decisions that led to the Order's destruction, and tried to understand how so many wise and powerful Jedi could have been so completely deceived. One of the key moments he examined was the confrontation between Mace Windu and Palpatine. He recognized that Windu had been one of the most skilled and capable Jedi of his era. He saw that Windu had done everything right from a combat perspective, identified the threat, assembled a team, executed a decisive strike, defeated the enemy in direct confrontation. And yet, it had all been meaningless, because the enemy was never just a single man who could be defeated in a duel. The enemy was an ideology, a philosophy, a corruption that had infected the galaxy's institutions. Defeating Palpatine physically would have accomplished nothing if the rot he represented remained. Luke realized that his father's fall, the Jedi's destruction, and the Empire's rise were not just the result of Palpatine's manipulation. They were the result of systemic failures, the Jedi's arrogance, the Senate's corruption, the galaxy's willingness to trade freedom for security. Mace Windu's duel with Palpatine became a symbol of this larger failure. A warrior who mastered every technique, who developed the perfect counter to the Sith, who stood victorious with his blade at the enemy's throat, and yet lost everything because he was fighting the wrong battle in the wrong way. The lesson was clear. Power alone is never enough. Skill alone is never sufficient. Victory in combat means nothing if you've already lost the war of ideas, principles, and hearts. When Luke eventually faced his own father and the Emperor, he understood this. He threw away his lightsaber and refused to fight, recognizing that the true battle was not physical. He won not by defeating his enemies, but by redeeming his father and exposing the Emperor's philosophy as the lie it had always been. In doing so, Luke succeeded where Mace Windu had failed, not because he was more skilled, but because he understood what victory actually meant. The duel between Mace Windu and Palpatine remains one of the most fascinating and debated moments in Star Wars because it encapsulates everything the saga represents: the complexity of truth, the danger of certainty, the power of manipulation, and the tragic consequences of fighting the wrong battles. Did Mace Windu defeat Palpatine? Yes and no. He won and lost. He was victorious and defeated. Both truths exist simultaneously, a paradox that reflects the deeper paradoxes at the heart of the Force itself: light and dark, peace and passion, serenity and emotion. The Force is not simple or straightforward. Neither is the confrontation between Windu and Palpatine. Perhaps that's the most honest answer. The question itself is too simple for the complexity it asks about. Victory and defeat are not binary states but exist on a spectrum, and understanding what happened in Palpatine's office requires acknowledging that spectrum. Mace Windu was a great Jedi who fought nobly and nearly succeeded in saving the Republic. Palpatine was a master manipulator who orchestrated the greatest deception in galactic history. Both things are true. Both deserve recognition. The real question isn't who won or lost. It's what we learn from their confrontation about power, deception, principles, and the eternal struggle between light and darkness. And that question remains relevant long after the duel ended and both participants passed into history.